All right, everybody, we're going to get started with this panel today. Thank you so much for joining us for our webinar today, Streaming Your Music, Finding Fans and Building Capacity. I don't know where you're listening from, but here in Ottawa, we are broadcasting from the unceded traditional lands of the Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples. I also want to put out a thanks to our partners, the Department of Canadian Heritage, and of course, Ontario Creates, and our members for being so supportive, as well as the City of London. And I will pass it on over to Corey from the City of London to tell us more about that. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Joel. Thank you all for joining us today. Big thanks to all the panelists that are speaking today. We got a great group of folks here, so a round of applause for you all. I'm bringing greetings from the City of London, and I'm thrilled to be working closely with Folk Music Ontario. I got a great team here, and the pivot they've done online has been fantastic. So really happy to see that happen, after the conference couldn't take place in London this year. So we're very happy to be working with Folk Music Ontario, and really happy with what's happened so far. So I won't take up too much of your time, but I just want to give a shout out and thanks to Tourism London for all the incredible support that they've had with Folk Music Ontario, and want to turn it over to the panelists now. So thank you very much from the City of London, and enjoyed today's discussion.
Well, hi everyone. My name is Nicole Rochefort. My pronouns are she and her. I am the owner founder of AIM Artisan Motion and Booking Agency based in Toronto. And I am going to be your moderator today for this panel. And with me, I have two industry experts, colleagues that I very, very much respect and enjoy. So bonus for all of us, because we have some personalities with us today. I do believe the three of us are all coming from Toronto. So I want to acknowledge that we are located on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabeg nations, and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation as well. So thank you everyone for being here, and wanted to make sure we do that properly. I'm going to ask my co-panelists here to introduce themselves, because they are going to be the best people to tell you who they are. So please, let's kick it off with Beth Kavanagh.
Hi everyone. I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to having this discussion with you all and with Julian and Nicole. I run a publicity and management company called What's the Story out of Toronto. And I've been in the industry for over 14 years now, working from publishing to publicity to now management. And you can see it on my bio on the event page that I worked with a lot of incredible artists across the country, from Good Lovelies to Harrow Fair to Iskway and I also worked with some festivals such as the Muskoka Music Festival based in Gravenhurst. I saw Bet was here from Gravenhurst, so hi Bet. That's me.
My turn. I'm Julian Tuck. I program for CBC Music. I've been involved in the music industry since high school. I booked Max Webster into my high school in 1979. Wrecked the gym floor, but there we are. Got into radio because I like music. Got out of radio because I like music. Went to work for record labels for 14 years. Worked for A&M and Island, as well as True North, which is the oldest indie label in the country. Then I got back into radio, spent a year in Winnipeg, all of it winter somehow, and joined the CBC in 2008 when they revamped Radio 2 and decided to become less classical and more contemporary, and I've been there ever since. I'm involved in probably about 70% of the programming of the daytime schedule on Radio 2. I provide 15 songs a week to Radio 1. I program 7 playlists for CBC Music, as well as CBC Country for Sirius XM. Other than that, not that busy.
Well, I know everyone's industry has really changed. And part of the reason why we're having this dialogue today is because we have everyone at home no one's really able to get out on the road and find their fans in that one-on-one or B2B kind of way that we do often as artists and creators. So now we're talking about finding fans and building capacity and utilizing online services as best as possible. So Beth and myself, we've really seen a big change in how we do our jobs, because so much of what we do is based on artists being on the road. Let me ask you, Julian, how has your job or occupation or responsibilities changed since the pandemic has hit? Because you've always been the one to listen and to be acquiring music. So just give us a brief understanding as how have things changed on your end since the pandemic has hit and more people have been home and not touring?
A lot more music submissions. I don't think I'm alone in that. I'm hearing that from people all over the world. I was averaging, I'm going to say a year ago, I was probably averaging 400, maybe 450 emails a week. And I'm doing 750, 800 nowadays. Most of those with music attached. A lot of it just, sent in, just, kind of thrown at the wall and people hope it comes in. Sometimes they use someone like Beth. The physical industry has gone away. I don't get CDs anymore, really. Everything now is digital files. Most of it comes through Play MPE or DMDS, both of which are digital distributors. Everything now is online. I use Spotify as much as anybody else because it's the easiest way to find new music in a hurry, which is what I do for a living.
Right. Okay. So because of the pandemic, everyone is at home. Some people are able to create maybe more now because they're not on the road or consumed with other type of responsibilities. So you're seeing an increase in submissions, which probably is a blessing and a curse all at the same time, because now it's going to be that much harder for someone to maybe get noticed within all these other applications. Is that kind of fair to say?
I suppose, although, really the submissions have gone up across the board. It's as much the starter out, the person who's trying to kind of figure out the industry and just put a song out and see if it works. But then there's also touring acts who obviously aren't touring. And everybody's looking for a revenue stream. And if you have had radio hits in the past, it's an easy place to go and get some money if you can get the airplay. So there's that increase from that. I'm seeing a lot more Christmas songs this year. Even just that, people just kind of scrambling. What can I get out in the last 6 months of the year where I can make some income?
Right.
So there's a lot of that on the professional side. And then the folks who are just trying to get in, it's that much harder because one, they don't necessarily know what they're doing or how to go about it. And there's that much more, more people in the pool, I guess.
So Beth, let me bring it over to you then. You work with artists in a couple of different capacities. So you wear a management hat, you run a very, very successful PR firm. Have you seen a bit of an uptick in terms of some new clientele coming your way and looking for your services to kind of help navigate them to get a bit more publicity right now, given that there's this effect of more competition because everyone is vying for the same spots and same attention?
I think I've seen it's been steady. I think it's just that I've had to be more strategic on who I'm able to work with, because the landscape has really changed in the last 8-9 months, as it has been for the past 5 years. The opportunities, the media opportunities are evolving, and so a TV morning show opportunity right now that may have been a little bit, I don't want to use the word easier to get in the past, but the opportunity may have made more, like it was more there for developing artists or more emerging artists in the past. Now is a lot more difficult and more coveted to receive because, again, like Julian mentioned, like the touring artists are at home, and some of them have this beautiful opportunity, this beautiful setups at home to do these incredible live stream performances that more developing artists are still not sorting out right now quite. I think most people kind of know what they're doing, but are really fine tuning their skills on how sonically they can make themselves sound the best, because without being able to perform live, you're, you know, potentially opening up an agent to see you, a manager to see you, a label to see you at these opportunities. So you want to sound the best possible way, because we know how great a well-produced song can sound, but how does that translate to a live performance opportunity?
And, you know, I think that's kind of a great segue into, you know, really what the bulk of this conversation is, which is, you know, expanding your audience, creating new fans, finding new fans. And now at home, a lot of artists don't have the opportunity to sometimes build out that team around them that can help them with that work, right? So we're going to kind of break this down and say, what can we do strategically online, coming from maybe an independent artist point of view, or someone who can bring some tips back to their team and say, hey, have we looked at this option? So just quickly, because I'm not exactly sure who's with us today, we are going to take a bit of a focus on the streaming and the digital side of things, looking at new audiences. I just wanted to quickly kind of bring some people up to speed. So we're going to be talking about digital music distribution, which is I guess the nut of everything that we're looking at right now. Digital music distribution, and how do we get it into the world, and the world being the different platforms. And so you've already heard Julian mention Spotify. That is a digital music platform that people, you know, try to get on so that people can hear their music. I'm going to send a link to FMO so that they can help people sort out who is the right digital music distributor for them. A couple of popular ones are TuneCore, CD Baby, Lander, Songtradr, and Record Union. I found those just from doing a really quick search on the internet. And of course, all those links will be sent to FMO so that everyone can follow up in some post-chat notes. Beth, out of curiosity, who do you use or have you been using in the past in terms of distribution?
I mean, I definitely have a mix of artists that use more CD Baby and DistroKid and TuneCore. It's such a mix. And then some artists, there's a lot of labels or companies that actually will just do distribution deals. So if you're a good fit for that label, or it makes sense for that label, sometimes having that extra support with a distribution deal and their back end, you know, some of them have really good workstations online that you can tap in and really, really delve into your audience and see who's listening to you across the world. So sometimes that's another route. I've had artists, you know, work with The Orchard. Fontana does a lot of distribution deals. So that's another route that artists can take is looking at, without doing that direct signing to a label, is that there is also those distribution opportunities that can be great.
And Julian, would you say that does an independent artist without that team or the machine behind them, do they have a fair shot at hearing their music on CBC if they were to submit something to you, versus like having, you know, someone at Sony send something your way? Like, are you able to kind of listen to everything that comes through and then just make the decisions as you feel fit? How does break down your process for when something hits your inbox? You know, does it get weighted in any way, or do independent artists still have a strong voice?
I think indie artists have a strong voice, but obviously there's a weight when a major label delivers something. Obviously, you know, they have an A&R team, they've got a marketing team. They've gone through the process of making sure the record's right. And really that's the difference, right? Anybody who has a team, whether it's a booking agent or a song plugger or whatever, they have people who are essentially doing the jobs for them that they could do. And you know, a lot of young acts do themselves. It's a learning process. You I think radio, streaming, all of it, it's difficult to understand if you don't. I mean, everybody listens to the radio, everybody's heard streaming, but no one understands how it works. I think everybody still has this idea that the DJ's picking the tunes and it's just free form, and he doesn't know what's going to play in the next 3 minutes because this song's on and he's actually in the studio running around looking for another tune. Those days are gone. I mean, everything now is automated. So there's less opportunity to find, that one DJ who's going to give you the shot that's going to break you out. But no, I try and listen to everything. Obviously, the volume of music is such that you just can't. It's almost impossible. I try and get my ears on as much as I can, but the reality is with the volume you're dealing with, if there's a clunky note in the first 5 seconds, I'm probably gone. Like, I'm not going to sit and listen to 3 minutes of a bad song if 30 seconds in, I'm pulling what little hair I have left out.
So I don't know about you guys, but I will often get something submitted my way that doesn't exactly fit with what the agency typically represents. It's a lot of folk, roots, jazz, blues, and every now and then something will kind of come my way, like a death metal kind of submission for representation. One thing I've really been trying to say to people over and over again is to know your audience. And again, I feel like this is kind of, before we can explore new audiences, we have to know our audience first. Out of curiosity, Beth, do you find that a lot of emerging artists will simply submit things your way without kind of understanding maybe where your focus is on, or the type of work that you do on behalf of certain, let's say, genres of music? And Julian, same kind of question, like, how much are you getting that is probably inappropriate for maybe a CBC platform?
Like for me, I work a lot of different genres, so there isn't many that I have I've really not kind of put my have worked with in the past 11 years of doing just publicity. But I come from a music background. I studied music at university and college. And so I try to listen, but I know pretty quickly, and just like Julian mentioned, if something's and sometimes I sit there and I go, holy crap, this sounds so good. And I'm anticipating the vocals. And then if the vocals for me fall flat, I'm like, nope. Because it is, I like any music lover, I've had the hair raised on my arms. I've been through all of that. And so it is really, really important for me to connect to the music. And I'm always honest with people, and I tell them, unfortunately, I'm just not connecting with the music first. And then I look at the story, because my company's called What's the Story for a reason, because a lot of artists don't know their story yet. And I'm happy to be part of helping craft that story and getting that story out of the artist. But ultimately, if they're not there yet, it's really hard for me to give a strong pitch to a media outlet about your story. So yeah, there are some genres that I know are not my forte, and and I can normally recommend another publicist that might be better suited for the project.
So Julian, same kind of question to you. How often are you getting submissions that aren't really the right fit for the type of programming that you're looking for, or that CBC is offering?
Well, I don't know if I'm in a unique position, but the reality is we have more than 200 digital channels on CBC Music. So there's, everything that lands can go somewhere. And really that's the same whether you're at Amazon or Apple or Spotify. There's plenty of places to go and put your stuff. I think, especially with young indie acts, there's a tendency to send everything everywhere. And ultimately, all you're doing is spending your own money. There's no point sending your folk record to a heavy metal show or your heavy metal album to a folk show. And you see it happen all the time. At the end of the day, I hear a lot of music. The hardest records for me are the easy ones are the ones that are terrible. because you can decide in 5 or 6 seconds that it's awful. The hardest ones are the ones where all the elements are there, but what's missing is that the intangible that you can't describe. It's what makes your ear turn toward it. It's got a hook, it's got a melody, it's got something that draws your ear, and hopefully at the end of the song, this is how it works with us in our CBC Music Committee meetings. At the end of the song, if we all want to hear it again, that's a good sign. And if we're all kind of like, nah, you know, it's okay, but I don't need to hear it again, then it's probably not going to make it to air.
So one of the questions that came up on this webinar bio, if you will, was asking about different streaming services based on different styles of music and genre. I tend to kind of stick with the standards largely because they're easy. So Spotify, SoundCloud, those are my go-tos because I find them to be very easy to use. Out of curiosity, do you think that there are some platforms that are better suited toward a genre or style of music right now? Or are you still working on some of those like more standard platforms that tend to offer everything to everybody? Beth?
I mean, I think that there is likely a playlist on every single one of those platforms that would suit an artist. The biggest thing is the user-generated playlist. So for a newer artist, doing your research on like Spotify to see all the different user-generated playlists. So and a lot of media now are actually starting to build their own playlists. So an Eat North does a great kitchen playlist every Friday, Saturday, where they include, 8 to 10 new songs that came out that are part of their theme, and they want it to be something that you put on while you're cooking your dinner. And Exclaim is really great. Every Friday they have the A-list, and that's where if you want to go and listen to all the new Canadian artists, go to Exclaim every Friday and check out their playlist that is on Spotify. But I think that I think it's just not relying on the editorial playlist necessarily as a newer artist, but trying to build relationships with user-generated playlists and starting from the ground up. Those are the blogs, let's say, of the playlist world, and kind of building from there.
Julian, do you have a favorite type of platform right now?
Not really. I mean, Spotify is my go-to just because, invariably, like I'm in the new music business. So, every morning I get up and I'm looking for new music. And, however I found out about something, the first thing I'm probably going to do is look and see if it's in the CBC library. If it isn't, I'm going to see if it's on one of my digital services, DMDS or Play MPE. And if it isn't there, I'm probably going to Spotify just so I can hear it and make the decision. I mean, that as the person who has to curate the music, it's all about getting my ears on it. I don't really care how it comes to me or what it plays back on, as long as I can hear it.
So Spotify being something that people can access quickly, easily, for free. Out of curiosity, how many of you, there's only 2 of you here to ask. I'm so used to doing a Zoom meeting. Wanted to ask, in finding audiences, I have this idea that we need to make it really easy for people to say yes, make it really simple. So I personally love receiving a streaming link because then I just click and forget, and then I'm already listening. Are there some tips that you can offer to artists who are sending things out right now? As 2 people who receive a lot of inquiries, are there some tips that you can give to an artist or to a team member about when you're sending something out, what should be considered? Either sending it to a manager for consideration or to a publicist to take on board or to, a music programmer. What are some of the key things that you need to see from an artist to kind of help you engage or to even get you to read that entire email? Beth, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I mean, for me, I really, really like, if you're reaching out to me a year in advance of this body of work and you haven't done anything yet, It's fine. Like I do have artists want to connect with me early, especially if they're working on the grants and stuff. Sending me even, 2 demos because a lot of demos these days are a lot better than what they used to be. Just so I can sonically get a sound of your music. But if you've got a completed mastered body of work, I love SoundCloud, a private or unlisted SoundCloud link in the order that you are hoping to have the album. That's perfect for me. It's when somebody sends me a Dropbox link with 7 different songs and I have to like do work. That's a little bit, it's not that I'm lazy by no means, but I like to be able to press play and listen and sit there and listen to 5, 6, 7, 8 songs in a row and not have to keep on going back and pressing play on these Dropbox links. If you make, I won't download. I will write somebody back and say, can you please put this in a streaming platform that's private, that I can listen to. So, and if your album already came out and you send me your Spotify link, I'm likely not going to be able to work it because it's already out. So that's.
Cool. Thank you. And Julian, what catches your attention when someone submits something your way? Like, what are the things that if you see it there, you're like, okay, I'm going to give this a try? What are some telltale tips that you could share?
First off, generally is the release date. So often you get stuff from indie acts who don't really have a plan. You might be the first person they're sending their song to. You are the release date. And I always say, I always try and coordinate with the act because there's no point in me playing your song if it's not available. It's it's a waste of time. If I get you airplay on CBC in Vancouver on, afternoon drive, and your record isn't out for another 3 weeks, I've wasted your time and you've wasted your shot. I think it's so vital nowadays. If you're trying to sell your music, you need to have it available. You get one shot. I mean, it's right back to the old days of walking into the record store. If your record was at the front rack, you got picked up. If you had to go to the back bin and dig through to find it, you weren't going to get it. And it's the same thing. If there's no point in promoting your music unless it's available.
And that's, I think, one of the areas where a lot of people need that extra help with, or those extra strategies and tips, is building the plan, because it's become very accessible for someone to record. It's become very accessible for someone to, sign up to CD Baby or TuneCore, and then all of a sudden have their music on these different platforms and to be searchable and to build some playlists. That's kind of now like the standard step that everyone is doing. And now we need to grow the business part of this. So it comes down to then, the sacred business plan, the things people really don't want to hear about. But really, at the end of the day, after talking to you both before this panel, it became that much more clear to me that to find your audience, you first have to understand what you're doing and then start coming up with some really specific type of goals. And so I wanted to ask you both, what is a tip that you could give to an artist or a creator in terms of how they even first identify who their music is for, right? How do I identify who's my audience or my ideal audience? And then, be able to offshoot from there in terms of building it out. I think first we need to first define who's it for. Any tips you can give in terms of trying to identify or figure out who's this for, and then finding where those audience members are?
Toss up?
Go, Julian.
Sure. I suppose, to me, I guess it goes back to songwriting. You got to figure out, what it is you want to be. Who are your influences? Who do you aspire to be? And whoever your influences are, go steal from them because they have great ideas. Bob Dylan was Woody Guthrie for the first couple of years, and it kind of worked out for Bob. He's doing okay. You know, everybody. I mean, the Beatles started and they were doing Chuck Berry songs and, you know, early rock and roll. Everybody starts by, you know, working their influences. And I think that when you're trying to figure out where you fit, that has to be part of it. And then you figure out who in that realm. I mean, it's different nowadays because of COVID, nobody's touring, but you try and find the right act to latch onto so that you can steal their audience.
Well, no, but you know, I think finding the right act to latch onto is a really fantastic strategy, because we're seeing more and more collaborations, whether that's like brand and creator or artists, you know, on the road with like headline support or co-bill. I think we're seeing a lot more of collaborations, and that in and of itself is such a great way to find a new audience, is to like latch onto someone else's audience, right? That crossover effect that, you know, most artists aspire to achieve. And so, Beth, I know that you had a great story about one of your clients and some success that you saw in a kind of a collaboration or someone helping your client out. Would you mind sharing that? You had mentioned today when we spoke, you had mentioned an example of another artist mentioning the group and then seeing that group seeing an increase in their social media account.
Oh, that was a sync placement, which, you know, sync placements are definitely and this goes back to Julian talking about being ready for a sync placement, because a lot of sync stuff happens very last minute to a degree, and sometimes it gets confirmed last minute, but this was for a movie, and so we strategically planned the release of the single with the release of the movie, and not necessarily building for weeks ahead of time, but a little bit more last minute, but we'd already, you know, we made sure it was up on the DSPs 5 weeks, I think, in advance, to help build to help make sure that the DSPs, so Amazon and Spotify, were all ready for this song coming out. And then when the movie came out, people, you know, for me, I Shazam songs all the time. So if I'm watching, or if I'm my husband's driving and I'm in the car, I will Shazam a song I hear on the radio, because there aren't always the DJs telling you. So I'll sit and Shazam, and that's how I discover new artists. And the same with TV shows, movies. I Shazam all the time. A commercial, I'll sit and Shazam it. So if your song is up on the DSPs, you have that many more, you have that chance that people are going to discover you. And then again, you know, the idea of collaborating, you know, making sure on your socials that you're tagging the people that are part of the project. So, you know, the band tagged the director and the director shared the song, you know, because it's, and that's how that little bit of growth, because right now, artists that rely, like, unfortunately, there are certain artists that they go and play a show and they sell so much merch side stage, and then they see a social media growth, and we don't have that right now. So finding creative ways of being discovered right now is, and this is a time to experiment, to have fun on social media. Something you post, people might be so excited about, and then another thing you post, it kind of falls flat, but you don't know until you share it. You don't know. And that's another way of kind of figuring out where your fans are. You know, if you do work with, you know, I did work on a project with an artist that he released 4 songs that were all collaborations. And it was such a beautiful way for him as an artist to tap into those artists' fans also. So we're in a bit of a unique time. And I know it doesn't work for everyone, but if you don't try, you'll never know, you know?
And do you think, I mean, part of this webinar, we want to explore different strategies. Mm-hmm. And so one of the questions I was asked is which markets should be focused on, and then which markets should be saved for later. Because so many of these platforms have international audiences. I mean, Spotify has, I think, like 36% of global listeners right now. Do you see value in doing a Canadian release and then looking at different markets. I mean, Julian, does it matter to you if an album has been out in Australia for 2 years, but now there's a Canadian release to it? Like, what does that mean to you? Do we need to look at things as separate markets when we're talking digital, or do you feel like that's still something that was for the physical realm?
I mean, I think any story is a good story if it's going to sell your music. You know, I can always remember years ago, Sony Records coming in and playing me this new act named Passenger. And, you know, all they had to tell me was it's had 9 million views on YouTube. My research is done. 9 million views. It's a hit. You know, so yeah, any story is good. I mean, I think if you're a young act looking to build your story, you have to start at home. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're from Regina, I want to see what you've done in Saskatchewan. Are you involved with the Saskatchewan Arts Council? Do you have any kind of buzz in your hometown? It all starts in your hometown. You know, every act you've ever loved probably started, you know, down the street from their house. So if you don't have a story at home, you're probably not going to have a story in Australia. If you do, great. You know, I always remember reading there was an act, I'm going to say 10 years ago, a trio from Ottawa. I do not remember their name. I'd never heard of them. They had a hit in Japan. Mm-hmm. They had like a sync license on some commercial and they found some success. And so they got to go over and do some dates and all of that. If you got a story, it's always worth hearing. And, you know, any success is going to be interesting. Like it's going to interest me because there's something there.
Beth, anything to add there in terms of what you've been seeing and hearing too?
I mean, we are in a worldwide consumption of music. So I think that there's always the argument about putting your music everywhere. But I feel that as emerging newer artists, it just gives you more opportunities to be discovered. And I know that I understand the whole idea of strategy and stuff, but at the same time, if people can't find your music on SoundCloud or on YouTube, you might be missing opportunities, like a music supervisor who I've watched a lot of webinars. A lot of them discover their artists on SoundCloud, their music on SoundCloud, and they say, but I can't find a contact. There's no contact information in your descriptor. So making sure you have, like, if people have a hard time finding you, they're going to give up. You know, they're likely going to be like, I don't even know how to find any information about them. I get the majors and the big artists not having a direct contact on their website. But as a newer artist, if there's no email to write to you to be like, hey, I'd love to license your song in this cool commercial, it's perfect, they're going to move on to the next song. So, so I personally think that there is value in having your music across all platforms worldwide right now, because you might discover your song takes off in Japan or in Ireland or in Germany. I think the biggest thing is what will be interesting is touring. In the past, I've had artists who had a hard time touring Canada. It's a big country. And I told them, I said, well, why don't you go and try Ireland? Go and try England. Play a smaller country where you have a bit more opportunities, especially if you met somebody at a festival that you could reach out to and be like, hey, I wonder if I could go and tour with you. And I've seen this happen. And they come back and they've had the most beautiful experiences because there's some really great listening rooms in Europe, in Ireland, in the UK. So yeah, I think that it's understanding kind of where your audience is, doing that research. I know it's a lot of work, but doing that research and seeing where people really want to see you. Right now, we're at a time that's really unique that, you know, an artist that maybe has never played Paris is doing a live stream, and then all of a sudden these Parisian fans are like, I've never gotten to see you live because you've never been to Paris. And right now they're getting to see them live. So it's a very interesting opportunity to connect with fans around the world that you might physically not be able to do because it's so expensive to travel. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 2 to 5 years and how artists get back on the road.
I think something too that's important to keep in mind in terms of growing this this fan base and being on a platform that is suitable for your audience, or ultimately where an audience will find you, is actually also understanding what platforms are popular in what areas of the world. So yes, Spotify heavily used across the world, but there are also some very market-specific or sometimes country-specific platforms. So I'm going to include a link to FMO to post a really great online resource where you can go on. It's identified by continent, and then from there by country, to look at what some of the music services are available, and it can be defined by downloadable, ad-supported, streaming services. Because if you want to get your music into Japan, maybe Spotify is not the best place to start. Maybe there's a more specific service that Japanese audiences tend to gravitate to first, or something that we don't really consider North America. So I just want to let everyone on this webinar know that I'm going to provide that link. You can take a look at it, and then if you want to expand outside of the Canadian or North American audiences, keep that in mind. What services are popular in other areas? Because what works for us here may not be the go-to place there. I wanted to also ask you about going kind of outside of those digital services, right? Those typical platforms. We're also seeing people starting to use TikTok more often, Twitch being a big spot as well, even having music embedded in video games. Are any of these kind of success stories reaching you or enticing you to go and find an artist that you heard, someone, hey, I was playing this video game and now this video game has an embedded playlist. Do you see yourselves exploring places like Twitch and TikTok to find new music? Or are you still kind of using those digital streaming services?
Julian, I'll let you answer.
I don't use, I'm essentially programming a lot of, acoustic roots music. It's more roots based than beat based. And so TikTok, I could be wrong. I've never been on TikTok. But I know it's relatively short videos. I assume it's fairly young and fairly poppy. I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe it's all polka music. It doesn't enter into my realm. I get enough music as it is. I don't need to leave my email and go find more music. I need less music, if anything.
Beth, do you see yourself exploring a place like TikTok to see what's trending, or if you wanted to discover new talent out there?
For me, so much of my work comes in from recommendations and word of mouth, but I do work with a lot of artists that are doing TikTok campaigns. So they're hiring a marketing company or a digital marketing company, a social media company to help with a TikTok campaign. And so that to me has been very interesting to see. Pardon me. And we've also seen like a band like Mother, and I'm sure most of you have all read and heard about this, but they saw success from a TikTok, like not of them, like just their song became super popular from a song, like an album that's 9 years or 12 years old. And so they all of a sudden saw new success found through TikTok. And so older artists or heritage artists or artists that have been around are seeing newfound success and new fans through TikTok, through Snapchat, through these different video game systems. But I think that if it really just depends on where your demographic is and what you want to accomplish, and sonically understanding, some these TikTok videos and initiatives are normally a small idea that starts with a song, and then that's where you just never know if it's going to build out. And based on if you have marketing dollars you want to spend, again, like does it make sense for you to spend money on a TikTok campaign, or does it make more sense for you to spend money on an Instagram, on something Instagram to build out your Instagram fans, because that's where you have the most engagement, not likes and views. It's your engagement with your fans, you know? And then does your fan base, do you really like this artist? And how do you tap into that artist's fan base? Because right now that's kind of how, without being able to tour, you know, how are you building your fan base in a social world?
And it really, you know, you guys are just saying, it really kind of comes back down to that plan. What is your plan? Releasing your music, great start. Making it available on a platform, awesome. You know, 90% of creators are on those places. What do you do from there? So engaging on social media, knowing what type of audience you have, and kind of putting in that business point of view now of saying, okay, let me go into the data. Let me go see who's currently listening or watching and engaging. And then how do I make that bigger? And to your point, Beth, about like sticking with the demographic, understanding who your audience is, and then understanding how you're going to go find those new people, keeping it local. Right? So starting within, as Julian said, you got to be a local success before, you know, a lot of other people start paying attention and, you know, start talking about you. And I've seen a lot of artists right now going hyper local. So even connecting with different stores in the neighborhoods that they live in, and getting those stores, you know, maybe highlighting them and their product on their social media and thanking them, or the store. And then also, you know, this cross promotion happening that was authentic. I mean, yeah, we can plan it and we can make a, you know, the marketing scheme to it, but a lot of this is also authentic too. And people are drawn to that authenticity of the story, the journey, and often the struggle, because we all want to be celebrating something, right, these days. So it seems to me like this is really coming down to the bigger picture of like the marketing and the business plan of it. Talent aside, right? Access to these platforms aside, what we're really saying is, look, the way to grow the audience is to come up with your business plan and to make sure you have a really strong marketing component to it. So we're saying define your audience, analyze the market, create your action plan, and then also formulate that budget. You know, sometimes we're stuck doing the work independently because we don't have a budget. Other times we're going to put all this together so we get a grant to help us, you know, or we, you know, save up the money so we then hire industry professionals like a social media manager, marketing manager, or even a project coordinator, project manager for the things that we want to achieve, right? Or, you know, a fantastic publicist for when we do have that story carved out and when we're ready to get Julian to play it, where does it go from there? So I want to say thank you to both of you. We did want to leave a little bit of time for a Q&A portion. Currently, there's just one question that has been brought to our attention, and I'm not sure whether or not, I don't know if this is a real question or if we're being trolled. The question is, do we even need new music? The past catalog is more than anyone could listen to in a lifetime. I think that might just be an opinion and not exactly a question. So I want to invite anyone who's on the webinar right now, if you have a question, maybe you want to share a story about how you've been able to grow your audience, or share a place where you're struggling or where you need some ideas, this is the place to do it. Pop it into the chat or pop it into the Q&A. Both Beth, Julian, and I would love to be able to connect and give you some of our own opinions or some of our own suggestions too. Oh, here it comes. Where does YouTube fit in releasing your music? Is it as important as a DSP?
I mean, YouTube has, I feel like, I don't know if the stats are right, but I think it was something like 6 billion subscribers around the world. So YouTube, I believe, is still the biggest platform. So for a lot of artists, and the DSPs now will formulate your, like, add your music, I believe. I think it's called topic I'm just totally gapping right now, but I think it's called Topic is their platform. But yeah, I think that it's still important if you have a video or you've done a lyric video, obviously YouTube is really valuable. I do have a lot of artists that still build an audio, especially if they have beautiful content they want people to still see. So if they are releasing a new song, but they don't have the budget to put together a lyric video or a performance video or an actual official video, they'll still use the single artwork. So they'll spend the money on making a beautiful single artwork and use that and have an audio link. So they'll have the music up on YouTube, but they're using that as a component for people to still discover. It's a barrier-free way of people discovering music, just as SoundCloud is. So yeah, like I still think, I personally feel that new emerging artists, that getting your music on as many platforms as possible leaves you the opportunity to be discovered. But again, if you don't want to, I mean, nobody's telling you have to. You ultimately do have to want to have your music on these platforms, because you can choose. Ultimately, if you don't want to, you won't want to be part of this platform, that one, then don't. Nobody's telling you have to. So it is ultimately up to the artist on that decision. And if their fan base is on YouTube or on SoundCloud or whatever, then, you know, how are your fans meant to discover you if you don't use? I do also, like, a lot of artists were big supporters of Bandcamp, and you can use Bandcamp as a platform, and then your fans can support you really, really nicely on Bandcamp. Tomorrow's Bandcamp Friday, December 4th. So, you know, it's a great way to go and support artists is with Bandcamp. So yeah, I think it's just finding I've worked projects that an artist will just release a song exclusively to Bandcamp, and that's it. And pay what you can, you know, and they've had people pay like $30 for one song because they really believe, their fans really believe in wanting to support them and stuff. So yeah.
That's a great strategy. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Julian, I have one for you. This is a question wondering how the streaming on CBC Online or in-app compensates artists. Do they pay royalties to artists? And if so, how does it compare to Spotify and the like? Are you the guy to ask that question to?
Not at all. Geez, I know you get paid for radio airplay. I know we pay on CBC Country on XM. You get paid. I don't know if I assume the platforms pay, but I, you know, I'm not the money guy. I just put the music in the box. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know any of that. I mean, I know, you know, people get paid on CBC Country. I don't know how much. I occasionally get very nice emails from artists saying, "You've made my year." So it must be okay.
So you know what? We will find that answer, and we will make sure that it's available in the show notes. And if someone who's listening has that answer, feel free to pop it in and help. Question here from Victor. I make solo guitar music, acoustic fingerstyle, classical, Celtic. I distribute through the standard DSP, but it's like whispering in a large, noisy room. Is there specialized platforms for me? Are either of you familiar with platforms that are skewing to a certain type of genre again, or like a certain type of style or something perhaps more niche for what Victor's doing? Or do you say a playlist is probably the best way for his music to be presented?
So for me, I started my job in publishing and worked production music libraries. So we had artists that would compose music for these libraries that got synced to TV and film and commercials. So I do think that there are a lot of playlists, and if I don't know, Victor, if you're using your Spotify for artists, your Apple for artists, your Amazon for artists, like pitching to the editorial team exactly what your sound is, like it's part of the pitching tools. And, you know, going into all those sites and their FAQs in the best ways, because there are a ton of calm playlists, chill playlists, acoustic instrumental playlists, drinking your coffee on a Saturday morning playlist, you know? So it's just making sure that you're doing it well in advance Like you have to do it ahead of the songs coming out or ahead of the album coming out. And then I would say looking at audio houses in Canada. Love it. Looking at audio houses in Canada and companies that, even in the US, to be honest, and looking to see if there's somebody that is building production music libraries for that style of music, depending on if you want to also go that route as another revenue stream.
Yeah, I think I would agree that I'm not familiar with any platform that is super niche or like satisfying exactly what this question is asked. But again, that's where the playlist, I think, becomes really crucial, or the type of radio, calm radio, or, solo guitar radio, right? So I think getting into those streams is where you're going to end up seeing the most success for what you're doing specifically, because everything is just so niche now. Like we have micro genres of music. And yeah, whispering, whispering in a large noisy room is such a fantastic way of putting it, right? It's like it's the pebble in the lake kind of effect. Yeah. Let me ask you guys, Beth, you've already mentioned this, but I'm just wondering, truly, does an artist have to be everywhere? Do they have to be doing Instagram posts and on Instagram TV and the stories, and then Facebook, and then like Facebook videos and YouTube? Like, do we really need to be everywhere in order to be able to have as much audience as possible? It's one thing to have your music on every platform, but then we're now talking about conveying the message that your music is there. Is that crucial?
For me, I personally think that artists need to understand the purpose for each platform and what's the best way to engage that fan on that specific platform. I'm not a big fan of artists posting on one platform and just sharing it across the same post across all their platforms. Because if I was a hardcore fan or a fan, and I went on Facebook and all of a sudden I saw, oh yeah, you got a new song out. And I went on Instagram, yeah, you got a new song out. And I went on Twitter, yeah, you got a new song out. And each piece is the exact same verbiage, same writing, same idea. I would get annoyed and I'd probably unfollow you on one of the platforms, because I was like, well, you're just sharing the same thing across all of them. But if I see that on Facebook, you're driving towards something else with this song. And then on Instagram, you've got this beautiful photo or this beautiful clip, and then on Twitter you're sharing for me a media posted about that single, so you're thanking the media outlet for sharing that song. So that's my thing, is that I really like to see artists being creative in the best way possible. And I also really strongly believe that no, you don't have to be on every single platform. If your fans are of a demographic that don't use Facebook anymore, then maybe don't use Facebook right now. Maybe when you start to tour again, Facebook is still really great for event pages and stuff. But maybe your fans are really engaged on Instagram right now. So use Instagram. Use Instagram lives. Maybe they love to hear you do a cover song at 10 o'clock at night while we're all lying in bed on our phones, And then Twitter is still where media lives. It is still where media tags artists. And if they can't find the artists because they don't use Twitter, I think it's a lost opportunity to potentially be discovered by that media's followers. But that's, yeah.
So Julian, let me ask you, when you finally get like yourself, like you finally come up to the email surface of the ever-growing inbox, and you have a second, are you on any other social media platforms? Like, and then a happenstance, you tend to find someone. Where are your go-to places right now in terms of social media, or places where you're seeing other messages?
Not a lot on social media. I mean, occasionally Facebook will point something to me, and usually it's just, Steve Earle has a new record. Like, it's something like that. It's a hint that something's going on. But yeah, other than that, again, going back to the, do you have to be everywhere? I think if you're in a niche market, if you're a solo finger picking guitarist, you maybe don't need to be on every social media platform. My guess is your fans aren't on TikTok. So, you know, you could be everywhere, but I think it's a lot of energy wasted. I think if you're involved in something that's specific, if it's jazz or it's something that's, you know, very much in its own unique corner, then you kind of have to do your own research and, you know, figure out where you need to be and where your fans are going to be. Going back to the basics of radio, I always used to say to people, you know, look at campus and community stations, send a copy of your music to the station, but also, you know, every station is online, every station has a schedule. Look for shows that specifically make sense, because chances are that person, that host, they have a show, they may be there every 2 weeks, but they might be the only person in that market that plays the kind of music that you play. And so that might be the only audience you find in Kamloops or Kelowna, you know, wherever. I can remember back in my True North days, there was a folk show on a campus station somewhere in BC every other Tuesday. That guy would get a Bruce Cockburn record from me.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a big deal because he probably didn't get that many CDs.
Well, and nowadays I'm finding myself, like, I guess my tip to leave people with is, you know, I do a lot of searches based on even hashtags, right? And so and then you can now follow certain hashtags, you know, on Instagram, and you can really start curating like what you like. And so I would start doing that too, just kind of exploring, like, what are the options out there? Are there people who are following this hashtag? Well, maybe you should also start using that, right? Like, how do you expand your audience outside of your music is really about understanding where your audience wants to go. So the lifestyle, like part of the marketing of like, where are your audience already going? Well, you know, go after them, right? They're already there. All you have to do is invite them in. And I really hope that today's webinar has helped kind of navigate some of the places where you can go and build. Again, thank you so much, Beth and Julian. Really appreciate having your professional insights, your strategies, your tips, your stories, and Julian, your cat's cameo.
Miss Pickles.
Miss Pickles. I love it. So I think, I don't know if Joel's to do an outro, but give him a second for that. Any questions that we weren't able to address here, we'll try to get them addressed to you directly. Feel free to write into FMO and they can send it my way and I will do the best. I want to say thank you to everyone for spending their time with us today. We are wrapped up on this end now, and I don't see Joel, so I'm going to sign off on behalf of all of us. Thank you so very much, guys. All the best. Keep well. Stay safe.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I am here, just not on the video. Thanks again to Nicole, you were amazing. Beth, you were great. Julian, you were fantastic as well. Please note we have recorded this. It will go up on our YouTube page in recorded format by early next week, and you'll all get an email with a link to that once it's complete. Once again, a big thanks to the Department of Canadian Heritage, Ontario Creates, and of course the City of London for all their help. Everyone have a great day. Bye-bye.